pressure continues to be normal.
RCP chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, roll with Atlantic.
Water towers can fly! Yes!
Tango Delta nominal.
Flight outside SCE off. Say again, SCE off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.
Yikes, you bet, concur. It's time for another NASA Spaceflight live stream. What's up, everybody? Not just any live stream, also, it's a NASA Spaceflight live episode, which means you see our faces, unfortunately, sorry, at least on my part, and you get to ask us questions about the topics of the week in spaceflight. So I see the 5x5s coming into chat. Thank you, everybody, letting us know that you can hear us fine. I am, of course, I'm Jack Beyer. I'm going to be hosting today. And I'm joined, as you can see, because it's NASA Spaceflight Live, by Sawyer. Hey, I love when I point right.
How's it going, Jack? It is a beautiful Sunday here, especially with everything that's going on this past week in space. I'm excited to talk all about it.
Yeah, we were joking a little bit before the show. It's like, so nothing happened this week, right? It's like there's so much that happened this week, so it's gonna be a good one for sure. And also, there is joining us our resident SLS expert, Mr. Philip Sloss.
Hey, Jack. Hey, everybody. Kind of a busy morning.
Little bit, especially because, let's jump right into it. Orion has splashed down in the Pacific Ocean. Hooray! It did it. It did the thing.
Successfully.
So, yeah, you can see it descending here under parachute. And
right.
a nice, a nice soft splash.
It was beautiful watching that, especially when you see it come into camera as opposed to just looking up at the chutes when they got this footage and put it on screen. It's just that excitement of that's your new spacecraft.
Right. And we actually got, it seemed like we got a little bit better, cuts into the live reentry. I remember for the exploration flight test 1, which was almost exactly 8 years ago. We got this very, grainy or choppy video for a few glimpses like this during the reentry. But I mean, that was the big flight test objective for Orion, was testing the heat shield, starting from Mach 32 and ending here, as we can see on the screen. I think Rob Nabius, the NASA commentator, said they touched down at 19 miles an hour, I think. So from Mach 32 down to 19 miles an hour is exactly as they wanted. And it's amazing how smoothly the mission went. I mean, that's exactly as they wanted after all these years. But that's what they wanted was. This is this is a system that is, it's close to a final design. They still have to fly the crew on the next flight, but a very, very successful flight all the way through. So this is a big deal today, especially for Orion.
Yeah, and it's kind of exactly what you would hope for and expect as a taxpayer or just a member, a fan of spaceflight. With a program that's been as long and drawn out as this, you want it to all go well on the first try. Like, yeah, sure, take a bunch of time and a bunch of money, fine. But as long as it works, if it works, I'm going to complain a lot less. And by all accounts, it seems to have worked quite well.
Right.
I'm going to grab some questions here. Oh, yeah, these are live views right now of the capsule in the Pacific, right?
Right, and they waited for it's actually now a little bit more than 2 hours after splashdown, but they intentionally left the spacecraft alone to let the reentry heat soak back into the structure and see that the cooling systems could handle if for whatever reason if they had to land short, like on a ballistic reentry, or they had to land away from the recovery forces, and the crew had to sit in the capsule for a while like this for 2 hours. They wanted to do this test while they didn't have a crew and didn't have to subject the crew to this in case there were any issues. So they're now approaching the capsule and will basically get into recovery efforts and they'll tow it into the well deck of the USS Portland, and eventually they will lower it down onto a cradle, and hopefully preserve as much of the data from the heat shield. They want to take a visual look at the heat shield, and then they're going to basically take a look at everything. This capsule, just like the entire SLS launch vehicle and all the stages when they flew, it's covered with development flight instrumentation sensors, and so they're going to all of that was recorded, especially for the reentry on the capsule inside. So they really want to get at those storage units and get that data off the capsule, at least get it copied and start going through that. So they'll start into that now after waiting for 2 hours. They have an ammonia cooling system that they're testing. So that's, while we're talking, they'll probably be working on getting the capsule on board the well deck.
Super cool. And that's like, they're going to sink the USS Portland a little bit, I think, right? And that allows them to sort of like float Orion in. Is that how the well deck works?
They, I think basically the well deck can be flooded with water. I think they were saying they can flood it up to 6 feet or more. And so they'll tow it into the well deck, and the spacecraft will still be on the water, and then they'll be winching it kind of into a position over this cradle, and then they'll seal the well deck off and then drain it, and so that's how they'll recover it, and then they're going to have to go. It's going to be a little ways before they had to go farther south because of this cold front that's come through California. And it came through maybe only a couple of hours before splashdown here, where I'm out here in Los Angeles area, and so it was very windy and rainy this morning. So
it was.
It'll take them a little longer to get back to San Diego. They'll probably have to plow through that front on their way back.
Well, I'm sure the USS Portland will make mincemeat out of this measly cold front. Although for us, like when we get no rain out here, it's like, oh my gosh, it's a real storm. Like it's raining. Water is coming from the sky. Oh God. Arid climates. Why do we build cities in them? Let's do some questions. How about? Okay, who was that one? Why did we Sailing Someday says, why did we land in the Pacific if Kennedy Space Center is where they want the ship? Why Pacific and not Atlantic or elsewhere?
I'm not entirely sure, although the Pacific is a very large. I think it's a larger expanse than the Atlantic. It may also have to do with I'm not sure if the Navy has a larger deployable force there. It may also have to do with just the way that they work with the Navy for recovery of the spacecraft. I think they did something similar to this for EFT-1, although it wasn't. I don't think it was coming sort of as if it was polar, as if it was like a polar reentry today, which is what they're doing. Versus, I think for that test flight was more of an equatorial type of low inclination. But yeah, it's not. I'm not exactly sure why it has to be the Pacific, but it does give them more real estate to work with in terms of reentry, uprange, downrange, and so that there those would be some of the factors involved.
And two other factors I could think of that might play a role. First would be weather, and that usually the Pacific is a lot less rainy and calmer, especially during hurricane season.
It's in the name. It's the Pacific. It's like, it's passive.
Passive. Yeah. The other is the fact that you then are not overflying the entire continental U.S. and I believe you're flying over South Pole and then a little bit of Australia, and otherwise it's just pure ocean. So worst comes to worst, if you go slightly off course, you've got much more room to wiggle and a lot less populated areas and flight paths underneath. Yeah,
makes sense. So this picture is of the Orion capsule from the EFT-1 mission, and you can see that's the well deck. They sort of, I said sink, but really they just like add ballast to the part of the ship and it sort of, lowers and allows water in, or maybe they pump it
Mhm.
in. Either way, they can fill this space partially with water and float things in and out of it. So
Right.
so that's what it will look like when they get the Artemis 1 capsule onto the USS Portland. It'll look like this.
Right.
Back to live footage. It's so cool that we have a live feed of this right now. I mean, gosh, I love the future sometimes.
Pardon me.
Let's see here. Really quick, thanks Jim Cavett for the Red Team membership, or for gifting a Red Team membership. Super appreciate that. Holy cow, Josh Malley becoming a launch director. Thank you so much, Josh. That is one of our higher levels of support. You get your name at the end of the episode. That's one of the launch director perks. So thank you so much. Tracy gifted 5 Red Team memberships. Thank you so much, Tracy. That's very kind of you. Always love to get new people into the membership program and see all the cool perks we have. Like, for example, gonna throw some star hoppers into chat because why not? Moldy Space, thank you for the generous support. Moldy Space says totally on an advert, but make sure you join the membership program to get in the Discord. Philip did an awesome job of keeping us updated through Orion reentry and landing. Hashtag Sloss fan club. Hashtag welcome home Orion. Welcome home Onion. Sorry, I gotta get that right. Well, thank you so much, Moldy Space. Philip rules. I'm just going to make you blush right now, Philip. You rule. Your depth and breadth of knowledge of the SLS program is
Thanks.
absolutely wonderful. Out of this world, thanks for the support. They say 5 bacon by 5 bacon. This bacon thing, it's got a life of its own now. My musical wolves, thank you for the support. They say, anyone else see the parachutes look like round mints? Sure, maybe you're just hungry. Musical wolves again asking, how long can Orion float on the water?
I do not know the answer to that question. I'm not sure they have I'm not sure that they've tested it for that, but they probably have some sort of a design number. But I don't know that with this they'd necessarily want to get close to, to let it, wait until it sinks, for instance, or wait until it gets hard to recover.
Yeah, the longer it
yeah,
sits there, the more water can get into places, and I'm sure
Yeah.
they want to analyze like all the data they can, and not necessarily waterlogged data.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not sure they know exactly, but they probably have. I'm sure they have some sort of a minimum, and it would be obviously more than 2 hours.
And I'm sure a lot of that would have to do in the event of an off-nominal landing for crew survival's sake. But yeah,
Right.
although I do like Jim Cavett's answer too.
Till it sinks. Oh god, that is too good. Thank you, Jim Cabot, for the support and the good joke.
That's a quicker answer.
Yeah, it's like, what happened? Well, first it started falling over, and then it fell over.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Good questions. I see a bunch of good ones coming in. Kyle is asking, will the crew get out of the capsule while it's still floating there, or do they wait until it's on board during Artemis 2 when they fly humans? How is that all going to work?
Actually, we heard this during the broadcast. It wasn't an answer, but what I think it's Shannon Walker was the astronaut out there on the Portland, and she said they're going to be doing some more testing to figure out what they want to do. Do they want to send a helicopter out there with buckets and take the crew off beforehand, or is it safer to leave them inside and bring them on board the well deck first? So that's still testing that they're going to do. I think she said in the next year or so they were going to be doing some additional tests to figure out kind of pros and cons, and weigh the pros against the cons of which one do they want to do.
Makes sense. Good question, Kyle. Let's see here. Wesley the Third is asking, do we know if anything on the mission did not go to plan? I mean, there were some minor bumps here and there, like a loss of communication for a little bit, but I don't recall anything, anything major. Am I mistaken there?
No, they've had some issues with a couple of power switching devices, where they would switch off, and you would need to recover them, but they were able to do that so that they didn't lose any capability permanently. And so this is just some behavior that they're going to have to continue to study and try and figure if there's a way to. They need to figure out the root cause for that one. But I think that was the only one. There was the issue that they talked about with the star trackers. And it wasn't a loss of functionality or anything like that. It was more of a just looking at the behavior of the system for the first time. I think both of those systems were flying for the first time in the European service module. So, but all in all, the spacecraft performed, almost perfectly.
That's exactly what we want to hear. Ricardo, actually no, sorry. Heat Shield on the topic of why the Pacific says less ground obstructions and shipping lanes to enter over and accidentally land on. That makes sense. I'll buy that.
Those would also be very good things to consider.
Oh yeah.
Full Circle Florida is asking, has a capsule ever sank before? I'm getting what, Gus Grisham vibes?
Right. Liberty,
Yep.
Was it Liberty Bell 7? I think that's the one that was the second suborbital flight. So yeah. And it wasn't the if you open the hatch up and let a whole bunch of water into it, yeah, that most of them will sink. It was not intended to. They were not intended to do that. Somehow that was an explosive hatch that was accidentally blown open at the wrong time. And so yeah, that I think that's the only case I can think of.
Yeah, and then there was the whole thing of trying to get Gus out of there, and they finally got him where he was kind of floating around in the water, and they tried to get the capsule, but the helicopter started to overheat the engine trying to grab it, so they dropped it. But in the 90s, they did have the expedition to go down and find it and bring it back as well.
That wasn't a Bezos mission, was it?
No.
No, I don't think that one was. His was just the F1s.
Got it. But yeah, I always ask, like on our streams and whatnot, I'm always like, worm or meatball, and stupid questions like that. I should be asking, like, what do you think about Liberty Bell 7? Was it accidental? Did he hit the button? Was it a glitch in the capsule? We get really divisive really fast here.
Right.
Good question, Full Circle Florida. Emma Burgess is asking, any update on the CubeSats?
Oh boy, that's I think we've heard little bits and pieces. I guess if they have not gone. Some of them we're I think they're still trying to hail some of them, and some of them they weren't able to do their initial burns to do their sort of, I guess, plan trajectories. So I think I'm not sure how well those have gone. There are a few of them that have worked okay, but and it's funny because we just had the Hokuto launch last night, and the Lunar Flashlight CubeSat that flew on that was originally supposed to fly on this Artemis 1 flight. So I guess we're going to have to probably. I've been focusing on Orion and SLS for the last month or so, and I think we're going to have, now that things are going to calm down a little bit, I think we can try and get a better assessment of what happened with all of those satellites.
Cool deal. A little bit of follow up really quick. I'm being told that Grissom was cleared, which I think they figured out after they recovered the capsule. So my bad.
Years later, yeah.
Oh man. Let's see. Wow, Paul Kelly, thank you so much. Upgrading to flight engineer. Again, that is just like launch director and flight engineer, the two high levels of support that you can do with the membership program. You get all the other perks. You get the Discord access, you get the members emoji, the preview videos and photos and whatnot. But flight engineers and launch directors, you get your name at the end of NASA Spaceflight Live episodes, and you get our heartfelt thanks. So thank you so much, Paul. Let's do some more Artemis questions. How about any objections there? I mean, we're looking at the Orion capsule just bobbing happily around in the Pacific Ocean. How could we not? Let's see. Here's the kind of a nebulous one, but sort of those can be fun sometimes. Oliver the Space Nerd is asking, what museum do you think this capsule will be placed in? I'm just gonna go with Smithsonian because all the major ones go to the Smithsonian, right? But who knows?
Because EFT-1, I believe, is still at the Kennedy Space Center, correct?
Philip?
I don't know. I haven't been. I have not. It's been. It's funny. I have not been to the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Center in a long time. Um,
I
I
know they
mean,
have a
there's.
new Gateway exhibit, which has a whole Falcon 9 first stage in it and a bunch of that. I think I remember seeing Orion there. So I could see maybe one of those going to Smithsonian, yeah. Especially though for Artemis 2 and or 3. I could see them going there.
Right.
But
Especially Artemis 3, if that's the first lunar landing in 50 years, that one will be an especially a big artifact. I know this one, I think the same thing with the exploration flight test crew module. This crew module is going to be used for a lot of environmental testing for the foreseeable future. So it's essentially just as this flight test is in a preparation for Artemis 2 for Orion, because Orion's initial baseline capability goes they have these 3 tests. So the full crew supported Orion spacecraft is on the next flight. So this test flight is supporting Artemis 2, and they'll continue to do ground tests on it now that it's returned, at least for the next year, if not longer. So if when it goes to a museum, it could be a little while before that happens.
Yeah, just a little while, but wouldn't shock me if eventually it does end up somewhere fancy like that.
and also thank you to
Um,
chat for confirming that it is at Gateway now at KSC.
Yeah, what up, Rough Riders? Thank you for that. Okay, so maybe a little bit of explanation needed here, but the capsule on reentry did a sort of a skip, right?
Right. I mean, I think it's hard to simplify these things down to a soundbite. And so, during the Apollo reentries, especially from the moon, because obviously, I think people forget there was Apollo 7, and then there were 4 Earth orbit flights too. You have the 3 Skylab sorties up to the space station, and then the Apollo Soyuz test program mission. But I don't know that you would necessarily call it a skip reentry during the Apollo program, but they did use the lifting characteristics of the Apollo, and Orion uses the same outer mold line, the same shape as the Apollo command module. But for this vehicle, they're doing they're flying it to a much higher altitude, so they come down into the atmosphere. I think down to I think it's below 200,000 feet, and then they go up over 200,000 feet. Whereas with Apollo, it was really, I think, kind of leveling off the descent, and it really just leveling it off. It may have, strictly speaking, increased altitude for a little bit, but and for the same reason, is to reduce the sort of peak heating, and so that you don't go straight in, and that increases the heat load on the heat shield. And so the 2 advantages of doing this reentry, where they are generating a lot more lift, and they call it a skip reentry, is it gives them more flexibility in terms of where in the reentry ground track they can go. I think they were saying, I forgot the number exactly. I want to say it was something like, it was on the order of like 3,000 nautical miles. They could go anywhere uprange, downrange. And I think for Apollo, it was about half that. So it gives them more flexibility about where they can target the splashdown point. If you were to have a weather problem like, weather issue like they had today, they didn't have to go that far away from this. But it also reduces the peak heating and gives you a little bit more control over that. Again, since we're talking about, they talked about shuttle reentering from Mach 25. Orion was reentering from Mach 32. And I think they were saying today that the peak heating on the Orion heat shield was double the temperature that the shuttle ever saw on its
Wow.
heat shield. So
Holy cow.
yeah.
So in
And
that
also,
vein, go ahead.
I was just going to say that this is probably something that if you're not sure exactly what it is, if you've ever played Kerbal and you go to re-enter and then you kind of skip up a little bit and then come back in, whether intentional or not, which has happened to me both, it's kind of like that.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, one, you're getting a higher heat load for a shorter period of time. The other, you're getting a lower heat load for a longer period of time, which, depending on your materials, that might be what you want. So in the same vein, Lyric Bread is asking, will Artemis 2 perform that same sort of reentry profile, or will it be different?
I think at least from an altitude standpoint, I believe it's going to do the same thing because it gives them the same. This is something they're going to use as an operational technique. So I'm pretty sure that they're going to want this capability going forward for all of these. I think most of these flights, or all of these flights, are going to be lunar, re-entering from either lunar orbit or this type of sort of cislunar trajectory that this distant retrograde orbit would be. So I suspect that they'll be using the skip reentry on all the reentries.
Cool deal. All right, well, we will keep our eyes on the Orion capsule, and we might come back to it here in a little bit if stuff starts happening more, but it's just so cool to see it bobbing around in the Pacific. Holy cow, Alan C., thank you for gifting the 5 Red Team memberships. Very nice of you. And Dougal, also gifting 5 Red Team memberships. Thank you so much. If you just got a membership from either of those folks, make sure you thank them in chat, and make sure you check out your member perks, because now you have access to some sweet perks. All right, let's move on to the next topic, which is still, yeah, you gotta do the spirit fingers. It's so they know how sweet they are. So yeah, that's not the only Artemis news that sort of happened this week. The mobile launcher also rolled back to the vehicle assembly building, as you can see here.
Right. They finally, after doing the sort of the post Artemis 1 launch refurbishment, at least as much as they needed to do on at the pad, that they came back to the VAB, and so that's kind of the first place that they're going to go for this one. For between Artemis 1 and Artemis 2, they have a series of modifications, and I know Chris G's been talking to the different contractors and programs about this, and so he has a really nice story about the mobile launcher, the rollback, and the modifications that they're going to be doing. And so it'll spend most of this month and I guess some part of January in the VAB, and then they will actually take it outside to a sort of they call them park sites. They're used for parking mobile launchers, but also doing some sort of construction type work. So in this shot here, you can see this is the mobile launcher had come into High Bay 3, which is where they'll stack the vehicles, and you can already see they'd already started extending some of the platforms, which will give them access to all of the umbilical arms, and that'll allow them to do a little bit more assessment of some of the hoses and things that are on the umbilicals that took a little bit of a beating as the vehicle accelerated away from the pad during the launch on November 16th. So so sometime in January they will go out to it's the West Park side. It's on the north side of the VAB, and they will do emergency egress system modifications. They'll do part of it there, and then they will take the mobile launcher back out to the launch pad, to launch pad 39B, to complete those mods. And as a part of that, they'll set up the emergency escape baskets. They'll run the lines down to the bunker, and they'll test those out at the pad. I think Chris's article also talks about since this next launch now and all launches going forward are going to be crewed launches, the crew access arm now has to have a full functionality, which means that it will stay up against the crew hatches until 6 minutes before liftoff, and then if there's an issue, last minute issue or something like that, they need to be able to extend the arm quickly. You saw that a handful of times during shuttle, when they had a late or last second cutoff, they had to extend the arm just in case. So they'll be testing those hydraulic modifications, and then once all of that's done, then hopefully sometime next year, we'll be ready to roll back into the vehicle assembly building and ready to support stacking for Artemis 2. Although who knows, we still need to find out about the schedule for Artemis 2 in terms of when they'll be ready to start stacking for that. But
And for
hopefully it'll be
anyone-
ready to go.
Sorry about that. And for anyone who's been at the Kennedy Space Center basically from 2012 until last year, that's where the mobile launcher was parked previously while they were transitioning between Constellation and Artemis.
Right. And they actually have two park sites out there. So the East Park site is where they're going to actually start building Mobile Launcher 2, although we don't know if that will be going on during the modification period. And Mobile Launcher 1, which is the one that we're looking at here, will go to the West Park site. So it actually looked kind of interesting to see them both of those towers get stood up while they were working on that. But I think the Mobile Launcher 1 schedule is a little more definite than the Mobile Launcher 2 schedule at this point.
Oh, we're getting a satellite view here. What is this, Harry Stranger? I'm kidding. Hi, Harry.
Right. So it would be up. You can see the lettering, the rotation processing and surge facility. So the two park sites are basically just to the south of that. So you can see the one on the right, that's the East Park site, which has been, it looks like it's been better defined and set up. And then the West Park site, they were still doing some work on that whenever this image was taken. So, but the Mobile Launcher 1 will be going to the one on the left.
Kind of looks like a screaming face. Ah, Artemis. Okay, sorry.
With the art it does now, yeah.
Cannot unsee. Okay, where did that go? So, sort of on the same vein as Artemis 2, like you just mentioned, Outdoors Man Show is asking, is the Artemis 2 core stage at KSC, or are they still waiting on that to be delivered?
They are still working on it in New Orleans. I know we were just we saw the engine section for core stage 3s just showed up at Kennedy Space Center in the last 24 hours. But the second core stage is almost done. They're finishing functional testing on that engine section. They'll mate it to the rest of the core stage probably around New Year's, and then they will ship it to Kennedy. It'll be completely done. They'll install the engines at that point. They'll do all the functional checkouts, and it'll be complete and ready to stack. And they'll ship it to Kennedy probably in the first half of next year, and then it'll be waiting basically.
Patiently waiting.
Right.
Well,
and that's what the front end of the vehicle looks like at Michoud, more or less right now. They've been working on it quite a lot in the last 5 months now since I took this picture. So they're outfitting this is the 4/5 that we've been talking about a little bit for both the third core stage and the second one.
People always ask about the foam, and you can see directly here the foam on the right clearly was applied much earlier than the foam on the left, which is much newer and much less tanned.
Right, and you can actually see the white band. That's actually also foam. Some of it's been sanded down, but that gives you an idea about what it looks like very very soon after it's been sprayed. It's really that light, and then
it changes color so drastically.
Yeah.
Neat.
Yeah, good old shuttle foam getting its next use. Had to mention shuttle somehow.
No, ding. Yeah, somebody hit the bell. Shuttle horses bacon. And then crispy like poofs next to me. It's like, why? I was sleeping. Let's see. And Ross is asking, with the success of Artemis 1, when do we think they'll announce crew for Artemis 2?
It's funny. Everybody's listening for little hints, tea leaves, anything like that. I can't remember which astronaut that Rob Navius was interviewing in the post splashdown. I thought I heard somebody say in the next quarter, but don't blame me if it doesn't happen that quickly. I think I'd heard somebody say that they also don't want to name the crew too early. It isn't just overtraining, but they're obviously going to have a huge amount of attention placed on them once they are named. And so I think somebody was talking about maybe an 18-month training flow. Even if you add a few months onto that, we're probably a little farther away than that. So, I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. It's just going to be a question of when everybody's ready to pull the trigger on that. But yeah, hopefully it's in the next, handful of months.
Hopefully, it'll be a fun announcement for sure. Well, that's not all the Artemis news that has happened, as we still have these live views of Orion. A little slightly important thing arrived at Kennedy Space Center the other day, the engine section for Artemis 3. So this is the engine section that will power the SLS that launches humans who are going to land on the darn moon. How
Right.
cool is that? How cool
Right.
is that?
Right, and these are just some pictures of the structure as it was moved at Michoud, and looking at the pictures that they released while it was on its way. The first one, apparently they'd moved it to get it sort of packaged like this for shipping to Kennedy back in early November, and I think it's possible that they were actually planning on having it arrive during the countdown for Artemis 1, but then remember we had Hurricane Nicole kind of popped up out of nowhere, and also at such an odd time in the hurricane season that I think basically they just decided to keep it in New Orleans until now. And so this is a shot of it rolling onto the barge at Michoud, and the Pegasus barge was towed around the peninsula, Fuller Peninsula, and it arrived at the turn basin. I mean, yesterday evening, I want to say 5-6 p.m. Florida time, and it's already left. So,
Pegasus barge is a busy barge.
Right, this is a shot of the, and it's basically just the structure at this point, and now it needs to be outfitted with all of the main propulsion system equipment. You can see it's just got, they lashed down a huge tarp over it to make sure that nothing gets into it.
That's no tarp. That's an orange jacket. See, I'm not the only one that always wears an orange jacket.
Well,
that is,
yeah, but
representing.
do you usually tape down the corners with duct tape or stuff like that there?
No, that's what I do on my truck.
Okay.
Someone needs to Photoshop a beard onto this now, and then we're good.
Oh
right,
God, what have I done? What have I done?
Right. But
please continue with actual information. I'll shut up.
Right. That's all right. So this was when it was rolled off the barge this morning, and then they actually rolled a piece of ground support equipment that's used for the stage adapter that goes between the SLS second stage and the core stage. That needs to go back to Huntsville, Alabama, where they're building that adapter for Artemis 2. Actually, they're building both of them, the Artemis 2 and Artemis 3, but that I take as a good sign, because that means that if they need to get that back up to Alabama, that means that adapter is getting close to being completed, and then they will ship that down to Florida at some point, hopefully next year. I would assume that they'll at least be thinking about stacking the Artemis 2 vehicle this time next year. They might not be quite ready to do it, but the reason that they're doing this, we talked about this during Space Coast Live. We did a little segment, Chris G and I, yesterday evening, and I wrote a story about it. That's on the main site. Boeing is the prime contractor for the core stage. They're expanding production. They're building the next upper stage in addition to the core stage. And so they're expanding their production sites to Kennedy Space Center in order to be able to build lots of core stages and lots of exploration upper stages to increase their delivery rate. And obviously in hopes that all of these programs that are coordinated together can reach a higher flight rate than one per year, which is the current goal. So in order to do that, what they're going to be doing is this engine section was rolled over to the space station processing facility. I don't know whether it made it over there, has made it over there yet or not. It probably has, but they will be doing that outfitting of engine sections in the space station processing facility. The this is the one for core stage 3. They're actually going to ship the core stage 4 engine section structure when it's ready next July. So they'll be working on those two in parallel next year. And then the other thing that they'll be doing is that the other 4 major elements, they'll continue to complete those at Michoud, but now they'll ship that they call it the 4/5 of the stage. They'll ship that to Kennedy and set that up in the high bay 2 of the vehicle assembly building, and that's where they're going to start doing final assembly of the core stages. And this will also allow them to go back to a vertical stacking model, which is their original intent. The first 2 core stages, they were just due to circumstances, they've ended up doing those in sort of an all horizontal style. And one of the things that this will allow them to do, one of the things John Shannon, who's the one who says we don't need any more of these in the intro, they have to rotate the stage when it's horizontal to get at different parts of it, and so you end up with a some pi wedge of that circumference facing down to the floor. So whereas you can design stages to be processed and assembled horizontally, but they design this stage to be done vertically, and so once you stand it up with the stands that they'll have 360 axis of the circumference when they start doing it this way going forward.
Very cool. Wow. So wait. So John Shannon, does that mean he also says yikes? It's like the first person.
I think he does.
Yeah. The first person says yikes, then somebody else says you bet, then a third person says concur, and then the first person says
I think he says yikes. He does say yikes as well.
Such a good word. Such a good word. I see our members are doing their job and they're throwing a bunch of yikes in chat right now, which is appropriate. Don't worry, Orion is fine. We're talking about a previous spaceflight event. Everything's fine. No yikes. No actual yikes. This is just a simulation. Cool. So yeah, we'll keep our eyes on Orion. We have so many good Orion and Artemis questions. I mean, we could just keep going on this. But let's touch on some other news, because this is quite a action-packed week. Also happening out there at Kennedy Space Center in that same kind of area right there at the Turn Basin. A new Glenn. That's right. Blue Origin news. A new Glenn fairing underwent some recovery testing. How about that?
Oh yeah, it was quite a show out there, caught perfectly on Space Coast Live as well. Those fairings are from, as we mentioned, Blue Origin for their New Glenn orbital ship, and those things are pretty big. I mean, you could see how big they are in the video, but for reference, they're about 7 meters in diameter and about 22 meters tall, compared to the SpaceX fairings, which are about 5 meters by 14, so a little bit bigger. But we think that this is Blue Origin's attempt now to kind of, a la SpaceX, work on recovering these fairings after a New Glenn mission to possibly fix them and then refurbish them and fly them a second time. But it was quite the show seeing them lifted up out of there and lowered down onto their support structures and moved around the Kennedy Space Center there.
Yeah, if you want more of this footage, obviously you could have seen it on Space Coast Live, but we also did a video of it. Brady cut a great video of it, which I'm spamming the link to in chat now. That's like there 7 times. So there you go, everybody. Check that video out. It's super cool seeing them handle this thing. I believe that same fairing half was outside when, like, around the time of the Artemis launch. Like, I was heading to the launch site, heading to KSC one morning, and drove past Blue's campus there at Exploration Park and saw this thing sitting out front with the crane, and I didn't know if anybody had shot it or not yet, so I got like the space journalist adrenaline rush where it's like, oh, I might be seeing something no one else has seen yet. And then of course I get to the press site and I was like, hey, did you guys know there's a fairing? Everyone's like, yeah, it's fine. I was like, okay. Never mind.
Yeah,
but that's cool.
No,
clearly a lot of work on Blue's part going into figuring out ops for fairing work and recovery.
Yeah, it was cool driving by the Blue facility and seeing those out there as well for Artemis too. Again, it gives you a really good sense of scale for size with that. Even just from that video, if you go and watch it on YouTube, seeing the people in the cars for reference.
Exactly.
That's a big fairing.
It big. Yeah, I mean, what you said, 7 meter in diameter?
Yep.
That's a serious fairing. Very cool.
For us Americans, that's about 23 feet.
Thank you. Freedom units. You gotta do the freedom units.
Yep.
Let's see. I'm not seeing any questions come through on Blue. If you guys have a question, ask. But I think since this is a action-packed moonisode of NASA spaceflight, we can sort of mosey on to the next topic, huh?
I will mention really quickly, though, it's interesting of where those fairings might end up. One of those could be a potential new building over on the Space Force side. That it seems like there are some Blue Origin vehicles out and about. And for those wondering, that former building used to be where SpaceX refurbished their fairings until they moved everything over to Hangar X. So that'll be something else to keep an eye on, too.
It's got fairing heritage. It's fairing derived. I'll stop. But yes, it is in fact an action-packed moonisode. I'm just going with it now. It's an action-packed moonisode of NASA Spaceflight Live because also, it's not just all about Orion. NASA has opened up bids for another moon lander, which the original winner is SpaceX, and then Blue kind of complained that they didn't get picked, I think, to oversimplify it a bit. And NASA, was it a congressional mandate that they had to do a second bid, or was that just something NASA was going to do all along?
I think it was. I think it was. It basically became a congressional mandate. The original, what was it? Was it Appendix? I want to say Appendix N. They had an option A and an option B, and I think originally, the way that they structured that, you had to win the option, some part of the option A award in order to be in order to qualify for option B. And so when the Human Exploration Operations Directorate sole sourced the option A contract to SpaceX for a number of reasons. You can read the source selection document for that. That obviously meant that only SpaceX and Starship was available for the option B, and they just exercised that option very recently. And so now this sustaining lunar development, I think, is Appendix P. And so those bids were due, and this is the new national team, I guess. This is this group here, and then there's the other group is Dianetics and Northrop Grumman are I guess the other bid that we're aware of. But I think like this one, no technical details are available at this point, as far as I know. It would be interesting to see at least some outlines of stages or number of elements in them, concept of operations, that
anything,
kind of thing.
Literally anything.
Hopefully I assume that will be coming at some point, but I'm not aware of anything, and we also don't know if anybody else submitted a bid, as far as I know.
Yeah,
So,
it's just the two right now from the new national team, which the Blues' previous bid was a national team, but they sort of shuffled around who's in it. They've added more people. I think there's suppliers in 48 of 50 states or something like that. They're like,
correct.
We didn't get selected last time, so what do? Make it bigger.
Right. But at the same time, from that whole congressional perspective, think about it, with everything space related, it was always, all right, what can you do for my district? A lot of that even goes back to why Bill Nelson flew on the space shuttle way back in the 80s, that was his district included Kennedy Space Center at the time. So it's the same kind of thing here, but it's interesting seeing now Boeing also in there too. But yeah, that's their way, I think, to try and appease Congress of, well, yeah, SpaceX maybe kind of have the first couple, but look, we're adding all these different places too that are good for revotes and stuff.
Exactly. Good old ballast bill. Can I say that on the air?
You already did.
Whoops. Yeah, and the other team bidding is a partnership of Dynetics and Northrop Grumman. And so those are the two. Do we know, is there like a timeline for when a selection will be made?
I'm blanking on exactly the time period. I know basically at this point we're in a blackout period if they're starting to actually evaluate these proposals. But I can't remember how many days it is. It's some number of months before they announce award winners. And I'm not sure if that actually gets, if this first phase, if this is a sort of final phase of this award, because if you remember with the award that SpaceX ultimately won, there was an initial down select, I think, to two winners, and then a down select possibly to one, and it ended up being one. So we'll have to see how long it takes to sort of ultimately come up with either one or more award. I think they said they were only going to select one. They were going to down select to one concept, and then that would be the second one alongside Starship.
Very cool. Oh, we have some follow up. Thank you, Alex, in the back channel. Eric Berger reporting that the current plan to name the crew of Artemis 2 is in early 2023. So basically what we were saying earlier, but nice to have some confirmation. Yeah, there you go.
There's the tweet.
Right.
That's the tweet. Send tweet.
Right. And it makes sense. I think really you wanted to wait and see, because the heat shield test was such a big deal. You wanted to wait and see that this is the second Orion test flight, especially for the crew module, but this was the first test flight for this heat shield design. So they definitely wanted to wait and see that verify that it performed the way that they expected it to perform.
Very cool. Ross is asking, what do you think the advantages would be for a lunar lander with a significantly lower payload capacity compared to lunar Starship? If you guys want to chime in on this, be my guest. I think I'll just start off by saying, what was there was the meme worthy thing where it was like Starship is it's like, what is the line? It's like extremely complicated and extremely riskier. So it was something along those lines. I'm completely butchering it. But and we all kind of scoffed at that when that statement was made. Extremely high risk and darn it, I don't remember what it is. Either way, Starship is an awesome solution. And I have faith that it'll work, but it requires so many launches. It requires, in-orbit refueling, and it's just an entirely new system. So immensely complex and high risk. Thank you, Alex. So, having multiple different routes to do the same thing, having redundancy in the form of different systems in case something bad happens to one of the two systems, you still have another fully functional system. Like, yes, maybe one of them has a lower payload capacity, but it's just sort of how you want to do things. You want to have redundancy. But I don't know. Do either of you have thoughts in this regard before I hit some super chats? Because we're getting way behind on this.
And along those exact lines, I mean, just take a look at Crew Dragon and Starliner. Same thing. You have that redundancy in case one of them gets super far behind, because keeping in mind that the lunar lander from SpaceX also relies upon Starship and all of that getting up and ready in time as well. Whereas something like this might be able to launch on a more conventional rocket, such as a Vulcan or something like that, as is, and not need the booster from Starship to launch it there. So it's that same kind of backup of, if something goes wrong with one, you have the other. And also, I mean, yes, when you've got the lunar lander from SpaceX, that thing is going to be massive with major payload capacity, but at the same time, you can always just have one of those drop stuff off and then another mission come back and use what's already there.
Absolutely. Good question, Ross. Josh Malley, thank you for the support. They say thanks for the shout out. Been a member since SN4. You guys are awesome and deserve the support. Thank you so much, Josh. That's so kind of you. And thanks for being a longtime viewer. For those asking in chat, yes, these are live views of Orion out in the Pacific Ocean. I love how it's like, all right, now the small boat gets to go. All right, now the big boat gets to go. Okay, now the medium boat gets to go. All right, now everyone back off. All right, now two go in. It's like they're doing various tests and whatnot, and it's just cool to see them swarm around the capsule like ants. Jim, thank you for gifting a Red Team membership. Thank you for all the support, Jim. We see your name pop up so much. Stephanie Shooty. thank you for the support. They say thank you so much for everything. Y'all giving my pop and I something special to share. Oh, that's touching. We watched your stream on the way to see Artemis launch together. Why did Orion have an iridescent color? Does it have an iridescent color? Have I missed that? Is it shiny?
Yeah, it was covered. It's kind of hard to tell now. I'm actually kind of curious. We're still at a distance here in these live views, but it was covered with silver tape, very similar to Apollo. It was, I think, basically to reduce the electrostatic discharge potential that you might see on a long flight. So again, you don't see the heat shield. Maybe I know they were looking for some from video from the wireless solar array cameras when they separate, but we'll have to wait until after they get those storage units off the crew module. But the heat shield was covered with that. The entire back shell of the Orion was covered with that, and so yeah, it's like that during the mission before reentry.
Got it. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Let's see here. Tracy, thank you again for gifting a Red Team membership. And Arash, thank you so much for the support. They say my name was on board to this thing. It went to the moon and back. Thank you guys for all you do. Well, we don't do nothing except for gab over the footage of the stuff and try and take cool imagery of it and get everyone excited about it. But if you're thanking us for that, you're absolutely welcome. We love doing it. So thank you to everybody for all the support so that we can do this stuff and hype, basically functionally act as the hype man for space. Oh man. Well, while we're looking at Orion, Killian is asking what happened to the ICPS. Did it crash into Earth? Did it get flung into the moon? Did it re-enter somewhere? What happened to the ICPS, the interim cryogenic propulsion stage?
Right, which is the stage that sent Orion to the moon, and in fact, they both went on a trajectory that more or less was going to make that slingshot flyby of the moon, and instead of doing this powered flyby like Orion, it basically went into it slung itself into a solar orbit, basically heliocentric orbit, and that's like kind of like a graveyard orbit. That's the way it disposes of itself on these types of flights.
Super cool. Well, I mean, not that cool because heliocentric, but super neat. Oh, that was a bad one. Thank you. That was appropriate.
Took me a second, but I did get that one now.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Cool. Well, again, we will keep our eyes on Orion, on the onion as we continue here. But let's move on to the next topic. How about, which is, well, first up, there was 2 Falcon 9 launches out of the Cape this week. For the first of which being a truly awesome twilight launch of OneWeb Flight 15. Oh my gosh. I mean, Sawyer, you were there and you cut an awesome highlight video for us, which I'm about to spam the link in chat for. Because it's a good job. Thank you for doing that. But you were there. How was it?
It was absolutely spectacular. I mean, those are always fun also because it was an RTLS, but liftoff was exactly 2 minutes after sunset, and the colors were absolutely stunning. You saw it there initially at liftoff, and even in the tracking footage here, you can just see the darkening sky behind it. The colors on it were absolutely amazing. And then
you could see it ascend through like the orange sunset light, like right there. It's lit by the sunset, and then the whole entire rocket goes dark. And that's a normal thing for a twilight launch, but we could just really see that effect extra good. Wow, I'm so eloquent. We could really see that effect on this launch quite well.
Yeah, the rocket itself had a very yellowish orange glow the whole way up, which was amazing. And then, of course, the big part being, yeah, you could see the color on it there. And then the big thing, of course, being the actual separation of the first and second stage, where you get that kind of the puffs of the jets as they separate apart from each other, and then the actual jet thrusters from the first stage as it works its way to turn itself back around towards the Kennedy Space Center like that. Those never get old, seeing those both in person and in the video again.
And I'm going to ask you about it. How is the sonic squeal?
Oh my gosh. Yes, Jack and I have officially named it now the Sonic Squeal. So as it came down for a landing, just like that, over at the press site where I was, you could see it right until it hit the tree line, and then all of a sudden you heard the sonic booms, which is three of them, boom ba boom, and then you heard an echo of boom ba boom, and then after that, all of a sudden you heard squeal, squeal, squeal. It was like a I don't even know how else to explain it, but yeah, it was a triple squeal from the vibration against the panels of the vehicle assembly building being at the same frequency as those Merlin 1D engines. It was just I don't know. There's something about that that I've never heard it like that before. I've heard the VAB make that squeal just for normal landings, but there was something about that VAB squeal that was just unbelievably cool.
Are we maybe going to hear it here?
Yep, it'll be right after this beach landing shot from Steven, which was also great.
I love the audio of various people just losing their minds. As you should.
Yeah, all of us at the press site too were just losing. Once we heard that squeal, we were wait, did that just?
All right, here we go.
Hurry up.
So cool. It's like the building like reacting to the launch. It's like woo! It scared the vehicle assembly building. I knew that happened on Falcon 9 launches. With the vehicle. Oh, here we go. Let's do it again.
One more time.
Yeah. So cool.
Either that, or as Alex mentioned, maybe some stormtroopers just missed their shots firing
Pew,
lasers.
pew. Yeah. Okay. I put the link in chat a couple more times if you want to go check that out yourself. But that was super neat. I knew that the squeal could happen on Falcon 9 launches, but I had no idea it would happen on landing with the sonic boom. That was just so cool.
Same. And I was expecting maybe a jellyfish or something, but you did see that the cloud behind the engine was just gorgeous colors on top of that. But then the big thing being that squealing at the end was so cool. It's something I'd never heard before in a launch. But that wasn't the only RTLS launch, I believe.
Well, just really quickly, I hate to ruin your awesome segue. The mission went well. The satellites separated. OneWeb happy. SpaceX do good. Okay. Please continue your excellent segue.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that includes this launch from this morning, which is the Hakuto R mission, which was for a Japanese company called iSpace, and is set to be Japan's first private lunar landing mission as well. So that successfully took off from Space Launch Complex 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station about 2:38 a.m. Eastern Time. And yeah, just like the previous one, this was another RTLS mission. The big difference with this, though, is that this also marked the first time that an RTLS or that a Falcon 9 landed at LZ2 as opposed to LZ1. Normally, LZ2 has only been used for Falcon Heavy side boosters, but the colors from last night as well, again, just that the lighting of that, the separation of those clouds is absolutely stunning.
RTLS launches are the best launches, unless you're flying the space shuttle. But that's not a problem anymore.
I appreciate the reference.
Yes.
Yeah, that turnaround, and again, the fact that right there, the little nebula that you get as the two stages separate from each other is unbelievably stunning. And at night, it's just that much more gorgeous when it was so clear as it was too.
That's awesome. Yeah, it just looks so beautiful as you see the interaction between the two engines plumes or the two vehicles plumes. Just yay technological progress. I'm so glad this is something that we get to see on a regular basis.
I know, 2 in a week. It doesn't get better than that.
Yeah, don't we have one from Vandenberg coming up here too?
We do. SWAT, I believe, is also going to land at LZ4.
December is the month
Vandenberg
of RTLS this year. Not complaining.
Yeah. Admittedly, I have to say the views for these RTLSs were a lot better than the last RTLS mission I saw, which was USSF 44,
Rip.
aka Vandenberg East with the fog.
Take that, East Coasters. It's not just Vandenberg that's foggy sometimes. Slash all the time, slash always.
Yeah, as many launches as you have that are clear is as many that we have that are foggy.
That's probably startlingly accurate. I'm just gonna move on because I have no rebuttal.
And as Alex is pointing out, I believe there are 2 more RTLS missions in the entire second half of the month as well. So we're not done yet.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely stay tuned to the channel because we'll be rolling out cameras whenever we can to catch cool stuff like that. So
Absolutely.
let's see, do we get any questions? Yeah, how long will Hakudo? Am I saying that right?
Hakudo R, yes.
How long will it take for it to get to the moon? I can't talk. Ross is asking how long it'll take to get to the moon. There we go.
I believe it's a couple of months. I would have to look up the exact date of it, but I believe the plan is to get there around, I think it was spring. Let me see. Alex said, yeah, late April is the plan for when it will get there and land.
So exciting.
Which this is all legacy, by the way, going back to the Google Lunar X Prize, if you remember those back in the day. There was a company and they had their spacecraft, which was just called Hakudo, and that was going to be their lander, and they had pretty much made it up until the point of launch, but the spacecraft that they were going to ride share with wasn't ready. So they kind of stepped down from all that, and because of that, no one actually claimed that X Prize money. So instead, they decided to kind of relaunch it and revamp it and get Hakudo R. So
Nice.
to do it again.
They're like, we'll do our own moon landing. We don't need no ride share. We'll have blackjack and I'll stop.
I think
And
it's
this is
using
just
the
considered
same.
M1, so mission 1. So they're
Okay.
planning on
Right.
more.
I
Got
think
it.
it's using the same trajectory that the capstone, I think it's called a ballistic lunar transfer. So it's sort of doing this balance between the Earth, the Sun, and the Moon, or is it Earth and Sun L2 or libration point? I think it's
Got
Earth
it.
Sun libration point, and then ends up coming back towards the Moon.
Wait, ballistic lunar
Lunar
BLT?
transfer, yes.
Delicious.
Bacon.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Right.
Which, by the way, this will be landing in the Atlas crater and Mare Frigoris as well. So that's kind of towards the southern part of the moon.
Oh, that's super cool. I cannot wait. Anytime you get a moon landing, it's so exciting. And I just want to point out we still are getting those live views of Orion. You could see for a second there the USS Portland has started to flood its well deck. You can see some of the water coming in and the cool little cradle that they're going to put Orion on. So that, some more progress going on there.
By the way, Jack, I do have to blame you with the bacon thing here because now even my girlfriend says she wants a bacon math shirt. So
Success. I'm like single-handedly keeping the bacon industry alive.
Yeah, I mean, if not a bacon math shirt, I'm sure there's some other good stuff we have though, at least at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. That could be good too, right?
Yeah, speaking of the shop at NASASpaceflight.com, we have a shop, and you can support us that way by buying various cool merch. We have SLS merch if you're feeling the SLS vibe or the Artemis vibe. We've got the exploded shirts, the serious one and the funny one.
I'm wearing right now.
Oh, nice. We've got the mugs, we've got the prints, all kinds of cool stuff, Artemis and SLS related. We've got the Merry Xmars sweatshirt. Had to stop myself. I can't call it a sweater. It's basically a sweater. You can wear it if you wear this to an ugly sweater party at your office and you get called out for it not being a sweater, then please DM me and I will personally refund your money from my own money. But for real, it's a really cool shirt. It has awesome Easter eggs all around it if you look closely at it, and it's an awesome design by Pauline. So definitely check out the X-Mars shirt. And we've also got, as you can see behind me, we've got to move around the right way. We've got calendars. We've got 2 different calendars. We've got a general spaceflight calendar, and we've got a Starship specific calendar. They're awesome. It's a cool way to put some of our photography up on your wall and to keep track of the time, of course. But also, if you get both calendars, you get a discount. So definitely consider popping over to the store and grabbing some merch, whatever tickles your fancy. We've got the general spaceflight calendar there on the right and the Starship focused calendar on the left. There was just so much. We couldn't do only one calendar. We had to do different versions, and you can put one, maybe one in your bedroom, one in your office, or whatever you feel like. But check out the store, grab some merch. It's an awesome way to support us, and we super duper extra double triple appreciate it. So thank you,
By the way,
everybody.
Jack, Who took the picture of the month that's on the wall behind you?
Oh, it's me. I took the picture. Of course, I'm self-obsessed, so I just put, my picture up in the background. That is October 2023 in the general spaceflight calendar. And if I ever shoot a photo that cool again, I'll be pretty happy. Oh man, please don't let it be a one-time thing. Let's see here. I mean, come on, it just popped up. I have to say it. Java Man says, how about a shirt with a NASA worm made out of bacon strips? I mean, store team, if you're listening, just make one for me. I want it. I don't care if anybody else wants it. I want it. Can add it to my bacon shirt collection. Cool. Let's see. What else do we have here? Oh, right. Starship. Did anything happen with Starship this week? Oh, just a couple things. I don't know. Should we just start off with the elephant on the moon and go with the Dear Moon, the Dear Moon announcement? They announced crew for Dear Moon. Yay! Of course, Tim Dodd, everyday astronaut, friend of the channel, was one of those selected. So, I mean, I don't think we really have much more information on all of this at this point, other than just the crew selection itself. But just Tim, if you happen to be watching this, heartfelt congratulations! What an accomplishment, and what an awesome thing for you to have the opportunity to do. I don't know. Go ahead.
In case many of you don't remember, this was announced, I believe, a few years ago at Hawthorne, where Yusaku Maezawa was going to buy out an entire Starship to fly around the moon, and then basically held a contest to try and get as many different people as possible on board, many of them artists, or in this case, content creators as well, to try and get as many different creative people around the moon to see what they could come up with and create and produce. So you've got Tim Dodd, who does his YouTube stuff, Steve Aoki, who's a musician, and a whole amazing range of people from all different countries as well. So it's going to be exciting when that does fly. Although I wonder if Steve Aoki is going to bring cake with him, in case anyone knows his thing.
I do not, but
he throws cake at people during all of his shows.
I need to go to one of his shows. I like cake, so. But yeah, it's a very broad crew of all sorts of different people, all sorts of different creators. Creators have an effect on culture. That's just a fact, and it'll be super cool to see how the impact of the flight to the moon will have on them, and what that impact will then have on the stuff that they create. I mean, we sent so many scientists and test pilots and military folks, and it's like, all right, let's send some creative people. So I think I can speak for all of us when I say so stoked for that mission. Of course, back at Starbase, all kinds of stuff going on, a whole bunch of work going on the orbital launch mount and the concrete under it. You can even see right there, the little excavator just chomping away at the concrete at the bottom of the mount there. It looks like they're going to tear a bunch of that out and resurface the area once again. Maybe I'm going out on a limb here. This is pure speculation. I'm sorry, but maybe they wouldn't have to change out the concrete every time if they had a flame diverter. I'm just saying.
I mean, I'm hashtag team flame trench, but yeah.
Okay, trench diverter, however you want to get the flame away from the concrete and away from things that it can damage, I think is probably a good call. That's just me. I'm not a rocket scientist. What do I know?
I mean, you always had issues with concrete at launch pads. I'm sure 39B is going to need some concrete work as well after SLS. The shuttle at 39A, they got things strengthened there as well. So it's not unheard of, but especially if SpaceX wants to eventually get the cadence up to the point that they're planning on, I think they'll have to come up with something to improve it at least, because this one needed repairs after a 16 engine and then an 11 engine static fire, correct?
Yep, exactly.
So I
think it might have been a 14,
they'll come up with something,
16,
I'm sure.
Something like that. Yeah, at this point, that's kind of why I have Michael confirming 14, then 11.
14, thank you.
that's part of my frustration at this point, as you can see, is like at this point it seems sort of obvious that the given solution is not one, and a flame diverter would be the obvious way to go. And it's just like, all right, can we just do it? Just do it. I'm picturing in my head, like, you know, the old school like juicers with like the little wedge thing. Like, just make like a segmented, like 6-sided wedge thing like you would have in an old juicer, have it like be able to come apart and go to the various, you know, outside I guess like perimeter of the mount, so that they could access whatever they need to access under there. And then when it's time for launch, have it come together like a little mobile flame divert. Just, you know, the easiest thing to design is when you're not an engineer and you don't have to actually do any work towards it. I'm sure there's plenty of much smarter people than me just being like, but you know,
I mean, again, at least like you see in the video, they were adding the plating to the OLM as well, just to make that part stronger, which is good to see.
Yeah, a whole lot of plating and armoring going on the GSE lines and on the mount itself. Clearly just trying to make the whole entire thing more robust ahead of, you know, more and more engine tests and ahead of the Starship orbital flight. But you know, we'll keep our eyes on the base of the orbital launch mount, and one day, someday, something will appear under there, and we'll all be like, "Oh, they finally did it! They're finally building a flame diverter."
I think the big test is going to be once we get to that 33 engine static fire, and we see the true strength of all of those Raptors and see what damage we may or may not end up with. I think that'll be the deciding factor when SpaceX maybe hopefully says, you know, we should add something to this.
Yeah, right.
If nothing else, just so that they can continue to at least fly more missions out of these pads and rapid turnaround like they're talking about.
The cadence that they are talking about wanting to do, and even that they just need to do for an Artemis moon lander, you know, they're going to need to fly a lot of starships, fuel up a fuel depot, and then fuel up a lunar lander starship, and that is a significant number of launches, and you're going to want to be able to turn your pads around rapidly. But Oliver the Space Nerd says, we don't need a flame trench. The booster can dig its own. That's too good. That's too good. And Ross is asking, what do we think the long-term solution to the concrete pad damage is? Will they eventually dig a flame trench? I don't think they can dig down because of how high the water table is there. Remember, they're essentially like a couple hundred yards from the beach, and they're even less from various lagoons that periodically are either mud or salt flat or like a couple inches of water. So but they certainly could do some sort of flame diverter, if not a trench. And see, here's a decent counterpoint, honestly, and I appreciate this. I am Jaded Hobo, interesting name there, Jaded Hobo. They're saying concrete is an easy and cheap ablative material. So yeah, it could be that, you know, we're all the dum-dums here, and you know, the solution is, yeah, just put down new concrete. It takes a day or two. Who cares? But to that I say, remember when they almost blew up SN8 because they shattered the concrete underneath the vehicle and it shot up into the engine bay and severed like an avionics line or a hydraulic line or something along those lines? Haha, get it? Along those lines. And the best jokes are the ones you have to point out and explain. And yeah, that was almost a very bad day for Starship, and that was, you know, because of concrete. Yeah, Chris L in chat says concrete rain isn't great. I'll concur with that. Let's see, work continuing on the extension to the mega bay there behind those airstreams. All kinds of stuff happened. There was the scaffolding. You might remember the scaffolding around Ship 24. They have begun taking all of that down. And so perhaps whatever repair work or whatever necessitated that scaffolding, you know, they no longer need the scaffolding. So hopefully Ship 24 is getting back into the flow. And once Booster 7 is out of the Mega Bay and back at the launch site, they'll be ready to stack things again and do some more testing. And I think that's what we all want to see.
Absolutely.
Let's see here. Looking for, if you guys have Starship questions, go for it. I just love the booster can dig its own flame trench. It's amazing. Let's see here. King Skywalker is asking, do you think they'll need a new deluge system? Well, so I've been yelled at by
Mhm.
I'm not gonna put them on blast, but I've been yelled at by not actually yelled, but like it's been pointed out to me that the system they have at the orbital launch mount is not a deluge system. It's more of a fire suppression system.
Mhm.
So will they need a full-on deluge system at some point? I would assume yes, but who knows? They're rethinking everything from first principles. So they might just decide they don't need it for now. But at least 39A has one, which Alex says in the back channel, which is yes. If you've seen that on any of our flyover videos, there is a proper deluge system at 39A, as one would expect.
Yeah, that whole ring there.
Yeah, right at the base, it looks super cool, and
It
like
really does.
the exact kind of thing you sort of would have maybe expected to be at Starbase.
Right, that's what you expect SpaceX to come up with, is those really cool solutions like that.
Exactly. Westy the Third, thank you for the support. Very kind of you. They say my Sunday contribution this week for the OneWeb launch, possibly the most visually stunning launch I've seen. You guys rule, NSF. Thank you so much, Westy. Oh, another one of those names that pops up all the time. So, just feel seen. We see you. We so appreciate the support, and we'll keep doing what we do thanks to you. Musical Wolves, also another name that pops up literally like tens of times every stream. Thank you, Musical Wolves. They say, will SpaceX make a flame trench out of concrete? Oh God, now we're like getting recursive here.
No, just make it out of bacon.
Free bacon. I mean, hey, what
Yeah,
could go wrong?
uncooked bacon, and that way when it actually starts the engines up, you get cooked bacon by the end of it.
Yeah, it's ablative. It works.
Yeah. And it's edible.
And it smells great.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need to replace it, you just need to eat it.
I just
Right.
imagine like all of the wildlife in like a 10-mile radius like swarming the launch site, being like bacon.
There'll be a lot of space bats and space frogs that are no longer with us after that.
Yeah, there's a time when I went one of my camping trips out in the Mojave Desert. I made bacon for breakfast, and then we went on a hike through a slot canyon for a couple hours, and we came back to the campsite, and as we were, there was like an entire herd of I think it's longhorn sheep, something like that, an entire herd of these things like transiting up a mountainside near the campsite, and we were all like, oh wow, look, we got to see nature, it's so cool that we got to see all the wild animals. And then we get back to the campsite, and they had somehow pried open one of the trash cans that had a boulder on top of it to prevent this exact thing, and there was just like various bacon ephemera just strewn about from bacon attracts animals. Anyways, we're way out of them. We're huge digression there, but bacon, whatever. You guys got a bacon story out of it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting though to see when they probably eventually do come up with some kind of trench or diverter, what it will be made out of too.
Yeah, I mean, in my head, it's like make it out of steel, water cool it, do whatever you have to make it work. Maybe steel,
Bacon wrapped steel. Right?
Make it delicious,
Mm.
crispy. Oh God, that immediately made me think of bacon bowls. Do you guys know the bacon bowls? That's a whole thing.
The commercial.
Commercial. I think that was literally bacon wrapped steel. NASASpaceflight, not sponsored by bacon bowls. Yet.
Although we should be.
Yet. Let's see here. Molian? Sorry, I'm probably butchering your name. They're saying may have been asked before, but could they use Falcon Heavy for the Artemis program? I mean, they kind of are in that they're launching part of Gateway for it, right? I don't know that you would call Gateway part of Artemis program, but I guess it kind of is. I don't know.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, you could, yeah.
So
But as
they are
for-
going to use it.
Yeah, but if you're talking about the actual capsule itself, Falcon Heavy doesn't have the capacity needed to get it to the exact orbit that Orion needs to do its lunar missions. So as strong as Falcon Heavy is, SLS has just got that extra oomph that it needs to get Orion where it needs to go.
Yes, indeedy. Let's see.
Right. And I think, Starship can do so much more than Falcon Heavy. And I think if they had not come up with the Starship idea, then maybe they would have tried to enhance, Falcon Heavy war to do some of that work. But I think I think everything they were even thinking of doing with Falcon Heavy in terms of human space flight, they're going to do with Starship.
Very cool. Well, again, as we have these live views, it looks like the Portland is underway. Is it actually just like trucking around out there?
Looked like they were changing their heading a little bit. I don't know if they're lining up and getting in position here. That's the cradle, the yellow fixture there. That's the cradle that they will set the crew module down on. But you can see they haven't completely flooded that area yet. So we haven't been able to hear what's going on with the recovery. I wonder if they may have had either some issues with attaching the collar. Maybe they talked about the spacecraft off gassing some ammonia. That maybe they're still making sure that or making sure it's safe for them to approach it to attach the collar around to the bottom of the crew module in order to tow it and kind of winch it and draw it into the well deck.
That makes sense. Let's see. Let's do some more Orion questions. How about?
There it is again. I don't know. I always get the vibes of like the 727 or a C-130 with the back opening up.
Yeah.
Waiting for DB Cooper to jump out now.
There's like a whole bunch of guys like in parachutes, like just waiting to hop out into the water for some reason.
Yeah. But again, it's a very similar cradle for those who've seen the Falcon or the Crew Dragon recoveries. It's kind of like that in terms of when they eventually do settle it down inside that cradle.
Thomas is asking, why are there so many people inside the well deck? It did look like a pretty large crowd.
They might be waiting. They have a lot of work that they want to do once they've got the spacecraft secured in that cradle. So I'm sure they're going to go in. It's sort of like making safety copies of your. We have all our photographers here. You get your cameras back. You make sure you get all the cards that come out of the cameras, copy all the data off the cards. They're probably going to be doing the same thing with the spacecraft once they get inside, is to get into the storage devices and make safety copies of everything.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, you're taking a photo. You take the photo. You take another photo to make sure the photo that you took is good. You change your settings a little bit and take another photo just in case your settings in the first photo weren't great. You take a third photo with different settings. Just make sure you have it. And then once you do have it, back it up. Because data is important. I mean, this entire flight was a test flight. It was to gather this exact data. So you better believe they're being careful with that acquisition of it.
Yeah, there might even still be some launch footage that, even from a month ago, that we would be really interested in seeing that was recorded on board the spacecraft. So, we're still trying to get some more launch footage. I know that. And we're still asking Orion and SLS. So hopefully now that the spacecraft's returned safe and sound, we'll be able to see some more of that in the next, weeks and months.
Yeah, fingers crossed for that. That's for sure. Let's see here. Here's an interesting one. Slackco is asking, why only 3 chutes when others have to have 4? I think Dragon 2 started with 3, but had to add 1. It's interesting because Orion is a big capsule, right? Like when you compare Orion to Dragon, it's much bigger. But it only uses 3 chutes. I mean, I think part of that is just size of the chutes themselves. Like you can use 3 bigger chutes.
I think they were saying that the chutes in terms of their shape are similar to Apollo. It's the same, it's the Orion crew module is the same shape. It's larger, so it needs bigger chutes. But I mean, I think they have this issue's not the right word, but they've had this the way that the 4 chute system works on Dragon is might be an interesting thing from an engineering standpoint, but it almost seems like 3's not enough, but 4's too much. And so they get into this situation where, it's almost like they need 3.5 chutes really, and you can't do that. And so it just, in terms of Orion, it's the same thing with Apollo, and anybody who's knows about Apollo 15, where they had a chute that didn't completely disreef correctly. It can land on 2 chutes. It will come down obviously faster, and the water impact will be a little harder, but it is survivable if they were to only have 2 chutes fully deploy.
Got it. Yeah, Alex in our back channel saying Dragon also has a lot of propellant on board since its service module is integrated onto the capsule, unlike Orion, which dumps its service module before entry. Oh, interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but that makes sense. Let's see here. Let's do one more. We're coming up on the end. Let's see here. Here's a cool one just to round things out with. Oh, what a cool shot. Look at that.
Oh,
That's nifty. Kubrick would be proud. Hiccup is asking, when do we think Artemis 2 will fly? 2024 or later? I'm gonna go with later. What do you think, Sawyer? And then we'll finish off with you, Philip.
I'm gonna unfortunately also guess later, because keep in mind we already had the delay of this launch from August till November. Then you also now have the damage that needs to be assessed on the mobile launcher and all the repairs to that as well. And again, looking at the actual data that comes down from this mission too, and any changes you might need to make as a result of that. I don't think that they're going to be able to do that in the 18 to 24 months that we're kind of predicting here. I would say early 2025 is very doable, although knowing NASA, they're still going to push and try for end of 2024.
Yeah, I mean, you don't take your foot off the gas, right? You want to aim for the aspirational. If we know anything about SpaceX, it's that you want to aim for the aspirational date, even if it seems like cuckoo bananas.
Right.
And
That's
Philip,
pretty much what I agree with Sawyer. I think that's kind of that would be a good place. Sort of the sweet spot for bets would be early 2025. And we'll just have, again, we'll be waiting to see. Chris G was talking to Mike Hawes, who runs the Orion program for Lockheed Martin. And so he has in the story, he says it's going to probably be about 60 days to refurbish some of the electronics. It's going to come off the capsule and then be installed in the Artemis 2 crew module. So hopefully by the time that happens, we'll have a better idea about, the schedule, because Orion for Artemis 2 will be the schedule driver. So when it's ready to be stacked, you can sort of work your way backwards and forwards to figure out, okay, when will Artemis 2 be ready to launch?
yeah, that's sort of the long pull, right? Is pulling
Right.
and refurbishing and recertifying those avionics boxes from this capsule that they're about to recover, and getting those avionics boxes ready to be installed in the Orion capsule for Artemis 2. I think that was like a schedule or like a budgeting decision that was made like years and years and years and years and years ago, where they were going to reuse those avionics boxes. And now it turns out that is what we're going to be waiting on as we wait for Artemis 2, not necessarily, core stage assembly or this or that. It's going to be getting those boxes recertified. So hopefully they're able to yoink them out of the capsule, to use a technical term, and get that stuff retested, recertified, and reinstalled in a new capsule as quickly as possible. Because holy cow, I mean, I know I was saying it, I know Sawyer, you were saying it, I'm sure you were too, Philip. After Artemis 1, after the launch, it was like almost like it was like, yes, that was awesome, but it was also like a somber feeling, like, man, that was so cool, why do we have to wait so long until the next one? Like, let's do it again next week, come on. So,
Right.
By the way, the official term is yoink, not yank.
Yeah, you got to yoink them out of there. Exactly. All right. Well, I think with that, we will wrap things up for this week. Thank you so much to all of our members. Thank you to everyone who became a member during the stream or upgraded your membership. Thank you so much, especially to our launch directors and our flight engineers. We could not do what we do without y'all. It's absolutely so key to helping us plan things out, expand our coverage, improve our coverage, and just keep the lights on. So thank you so much to the launch directors, flight engineers, and all of our members. You guys rule. We love what we do, and we get to do it because of you. So thank you so much. All righty. Well, Sawyer, thank you for joining us this week.
Thank you, Jack. It was my absolute pleasure. And thank you to everyone watching as well, and for all the great questions and comments. And yeah, I next time I got up my pun game a little more. I was kind of weak on this one.
No, it was good. We was like a chill, like Sunday episode. I was looking for a pun there, but my brain didn't arrive at at a solution, but before. Anyways, Philip, thank you for joining us this week.
Thanks,
and
or
filling
we
our
actually
heads.
doing this or
Yeah,
something
well,
like
let's
that.
all do it. Let's all do it.
Yes. All
tune
right.
in. Tune in next time for more NASA spaceflight goodness. Bye, y'all.
We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be nominal.
Our chamber pressure looks good.
Traveling up. Roger, roll, Atlantic.
Water towers, fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Flight outside SCE off. Say again, SCE off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.